I like looked at my team and there were other high performers on the team. And like I felt like included and accepted and like valued and seen and all of those things. And it distracted me so much. Like, why did I stay at EY for 5 years? It's because I got labeled a four, right? And we like walked around with like our ratings, like on our freaking faces. Like, and we would talk about people with their ratings associated. Like, oh, that person's a high performer. That one thing, that cultural nonsense kept me at EY because I was so obsessed and proud. Until I realized like it was all smoke and mirrors and the work I was doing was not fulfilling to me.
Guys, hey, it's Delia. I never do these little intro things, so apologies if I'm a bit awkward, but just going for it. If you hate these little intro things, this is why I don't do them, because I actually find them really boring and I always just want to skip to the episode. So if you're one of those people, feel free to skip. I'm just warning you that, or apologizing that my audio quality is yeah, I'm not going to say it's so bad. I think hopefully it's fine, but there's just a few bits that it sounds like I'm underwater, and I really apologize for that. I'm super annoyed at myself. So that's all. If you want to just skip ahead to the episode and hear from Jess, go for it. Such a good ep. Enjoy. If you want to hear my whole backstory ramble of why I'm like annoyed at myself and how this happened, and something else I'm sad about. Okay, so basically, this week I was like, I'm really like, the podcast comes out every single week and I kind of just like trust a guest will come, like everything will work out and the podcast will happen. And this week I had a couple scheduled and then they fell through and it was like, oh shit, like I actually need to get my skates out on and figure out who's going to be the guest. And I was like, oh my God, who's free in like 48 hours notice? The podcast has to go out. So I just posted on Twitter, I was like, did not expect anyone to respond, saying, does anyone have an hour free in the next 48 hours where I can ask you questions about your life? This was after trying like multiple different things and asking everyone I know to be like, oh my God, give me someone to interview in the next 2 days. Anyway, posted that on Twitter, was like, don't know what will happen. I ended up getting so many messages. And I'm so excited I'm going to interview multiple of these people. So Jess was like the first message. This is my conversation with Jess. Right before I interviewed Jess, and you will hear me talk about it in this podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, this is my second like interviewing someone random off Twitter. I interviewed a lovely Irishman called Paul, who also messaged me straight away on Twitter. He had an anonymous account, and so like an emoji for a picture and not a fake name. So I had no idea who I was about to meet. He was just like, I'm an Irish dad of two. And I was like, cool, let's do it. And he kind of did it as a joke. He was like, I assume you want celebrities. I was like, nah, like I just love chatting to everyday people. Like we're all just human. I was like, we're all celebrities and we're all just human. And we had this amazing conversation. It was so lovely. He was from this working class suburb in Dublin. He was a postman and then done various other things. And he kind of and he talks about this because from this kind of like rough area or whatever, he would play up to that. But we talked about him dealing with anxiety and all these things. It was just such a beautiful conversation. He was like the nicest person in the world. Anyway, because I've had like these internet issues and I was like tethering off my phone, it was just the whole thing was so stressful. Because yeah, I'm back in Australia. Long story. And there is internet in Australia. That makes it sound like it's like that. Anyway, whatever. Yeah, I lost half the conversation. I'm like so upset. So hopefully I'll ask him if he's up for re-recording like sometime soon. And so then I can share a conversation with him because that was lovely. And then what happened with Jess, again, I was like super stressed, internet not working, had to tether off my phone, which by the way used like 5 gig. And it's also just like not the most reliable. So there's bits where it like cuts in and out. I've tried to like remove those bits. um, but keeping in the spirit of an unedited conversation. And oh my God, I really am rambling. This is why people get like 8-minute voice notes from me. Anyway, the point is, in this conversation with Jess, because I was so stressed of like, oh my God, the internet's not working, it's freezing, blah, 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 blah. My microphone somehow, even though it was plugged in, it just wasn't using the actual microphone. It was using the computer audio, which sounds so shit. I assume it's like fine. I mean, you can just listen and hopefully it's fine. Also because Jess is doing like large majority of the talking, so hopefully it's not a problem. But it's so funny because I'm always on to guess of like, have you got some headphones, or like what's your computer audio situation, because don't use the computer audio because the sound quality is so bad. And Jess is using computer audio but on a Mac that have like better microphones, clearly, as you can hear. And then it's funny because mine has like gone onto the computer audio, which does sound terrible. But yeah, hopefully not that bad. Okay, long ramble over. Please enjoy the episode. It's such a good conversation, and I'm just so happy I'm meeting all these fun people on Twitter. It can be a really beautiful place. Can also have all that toxic stuff, which we kind of talk about, but you can just like, fix your algorithm to avoid that stuff. Anyway, enjoy. And you're in New York.
I'm in New York. Yeah. I'm actually in Long Island.
Cool. Whereabouts in Long Island?
It's called Mineola. Um, it's like central Long Island. It's a 30-minute train into Penn Station.
Nice. And you
Yeah.
live there?
Yeah, I just moved here like a month ago. It's on the train though. It's like us testing suburbia. Um, so it's like a 5-minute walk to the train and then 30 minutes into Penn Station. So it feels very like as if we're living in Brooklyn in my eyes.
Nice. Where were you before you moved?
I was actually in Long Island City, which is like one subway stop outside of Manhattan into Queens.
Yeah. Okay, this is so for audience context, this is the second recording I've done of talk to a random person on Twitter because I've messed up my scheduling and need a podcast guest. And I had so many messages. Anyway, so I recorded one yesterday as well. But I think you were the first person to message straight away, like, yep, I'll do it. Because it was like, the question was like, who is free for an hour to let me ask some questions about their life? And you were like, yep, me. And then we locked it in. And so I know nothing about you before you messaged, but since have stalked you because I could, unlike the other guy who was literally like an anonymous account. I was like, I have no idea who's about to pop up on the screen. Anyway, he was like a lovely man in Ireland. But for you, it was like, okay, I went on your LinkedIn, I went on your Instagram. So I'm like, I saw you just got married recently. Congrats. In like a surprise wedding, which you'll have to tell us about. And then I also saw that you worked at EY the same time I worked at EY in New York. Like that was my first job. I moved to New York and was working there for, but I don't, but yeah, I don't know if you were in that office in Times Square.
I was. I was. I joined in 2016.
So
And
funny.
5 years. Yeah. But
And I was about to say, it seems like you love your job, but then you just told me you're self-employed or you're not working a job. So what is the story?
yeah. I'm I'm self-employed. I'm doing fractional operations. So I'm loving it. It's been fantastic. That's like a whole story. Should we get into that now, or where do you want to start?
Maybe we'll get there. We'll
Okay.
start with how you grew up, but if you want to summarize in like 2 minutes what your job is now and or what your life looks like now and what it all means.
Yeah, so a few months ago, actually about 6 months ago, I left my full-time role, which we'll talk more about. I kind of did like what a lot of people are doing, like the little sabbatical thing. Took some time off, and then a few months ago started doing fractional operations for startup founders and venture capitalists. So I have a few clients, and really it's helping CEOs, founders with things that are really time consuming, kind of high priority, but high time intensity. And so taking all things like business operations, um, business development, and strategic partnerships off their plate and spearheading that. So yeah,
Cool. And you're loving it?
it's been really good. It's been incredible. I'm like very, it's one of these things that like in December, I would have never imagined that this is where I landed. I left my role and didn't have much of a plan. And that was like very intentionally. I wanted to like really figure out what I wanted to do. Um, but now like looking back, like hindsight's 2020, it's like this was the best way it could have unfolded.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go back to the start and talk about how you grew up.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm living near where I grew up. So I grew up on Long Island. Um, it's called Belmore. I had a brother, and my dad was a cop. My mom was a preschool teacher. Um, kind of a very traditional Long Island upbringing. Um, and I'd say the story gets more interesting when I went to college. Um, with that, my parents' like most successful friends were accountants, and worked at the Big Four. And I wanted some really ambitious, like really hard kind of career. That's like what I always saw for myself. So I became an accounting major, um, and then started my career in the Big Four, in the audit practice. So yeah,
Great. Okay, you really skimmed over the whole
the whole
first
upbringing.
years. So it was like a happy childhood, like nothing crazy. Because often people will be like, oh, like my life really changed when I was 5 and this major thing happened.
Very interesting. I feel like my growing up was very basic. Like it was very, there was like moments of like financial hardships. Like there were like little moments like that throughout. Um but they feel like very consistent with other people. So like it doesn't like stand out to me. I'd say one of the more like probably interesting things was I danced a lot. That was like, academics were important to me, but like while I was growing up, but dance was also like equally important to me. So I did a lot with that. I did like a lot of traveling with dance, and then I ended up choosing my college because I made the dance team there. So again, like was very much like split in how I was prioritizing my life. Like 50% was like thinking about dance and like how that could evolve, and then 50% was thinking about like academics and career. Um, so that was like a lot of my time growing up, and it's really interesting. I think people who are like in sports feel this a lot, and I think I had like a semblance of that of like after college, if you've like done this and like it's been your whole life, you like leave and you like feel depleted and like you like don't have the structure that you had with your sport or your activity. Um so I definitely had that moment like in college and after college of like I'd invested so much time into dance and then it just like dissipated. Um, yeah, I feel like that's probably the biggest thing of my like growing up.
What kind of dance?
I'm kind of like the gamut of like jazz, hip hop, contemporary, like commercially type of dance. And so it was that in like a dance studio, but then also on like my high school dance team where we competed like at UDA or NDA, which is what the Bring It On movie is based off of. Terrible reference there, but like Bring It On is like at UCA, so they have that for high school and they have that for college. So that type of like environment and energy, and so yeah, it was like dance studio, but also dance team, high school and college.
Oh. But it's different to cheerleading, right? Bring It On's
Yeah, it's
cheerleading,
different,
isn't
but
it?
it's the same competition. So like in college, like you'd go to UDA, UCA, it's one weekend. And so like the co-ed cheer team would go, the all-girls cheer team and the dance team and even the mascots. And so like the competition's all under one roof.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you get into it?
I'm dance in general. I don't know. I started when I was like 3. So that story's not like that interesting of like how I started. Um, but then I think what's probably more interesting is like when I started taking it seriously is like I went to like a local dance studio, not anything crazy. But we would go to like conventions, and I saw people who were amazing and like really talented. Um, and so I started training more, started going into the city, going to like Broadway Dance Center from Long Island, and just like got really like serious and like focused on it. And then eventually, like that same convention that kind of like sparked that light. They had like a apprentice program, like a company program for people in high school. So when I was in high school, I flew out to California, I auditioned, I didn't make it. Then I flew out the next summer, I auditioned again and I made it. And so that was like a very intense kind of on the weekends. We would travel to the conventions across the country, assist like these kind of faculty professional dancers. And so I'd say that was like the moment where like I started taking things very seriously. I started like missing school to go to this. And yeah, and I'd say it became like so important. I then picked my college based off of it.
And did you love it?
I am I I don't think I really loved it. I think dance is like something that I like structure. I like having a goal and like training towards it. So like dance is translated to like fitness for me and like working out, and strength training and all of that. But it's more I liked like the discipline around it and I liked the goal setting and like the each day training. Um, but I'm not like really a creative person in that sense. I have some creativity, but not the same that like a true, like really talented dancer has. And so there was always that gap where like I almost took an academic approach to dance. I always saw it as like, like trying to like quantify and calculate like how I can, hit X, Y, or Z versus like the people who like really just like loved it and wanted to be there because they were like artistic. Yeah, so I loved it from that perspective, but there's always a gap for me between like the true passion and love of like a creative and an artistic person.
And you were obviously really good at it.
I am, that's like a weird question to answer. Like I'm like I always feel weird about that. I would say I was good. I'd say like I was competitive and um I held my own and I did well and I had qualifiers. Yeah.
Are you the oldest?
No, my brother's 2 years older.
Okay, so it wasn't like it didn't bother him so much that you were like flying all around the country.
Uh, as you say that, I'm like, if I were him, I totally would have been envious, but uh no. No, I think like he was in like a whole different world. He was more like in his like social world, whereas like that was social like wasn't my priority. So we were on like different wavelengths.
Hmm. And did your grandparents grow up in Long Island as well?
No, my parents grew up in Queens, both of them. Um and my grandparents, both of them grew up in Queens. So my parents, it's Queens is like 20 minutes from Long Island. So my parents just migrated a little bit more east when they wanted to have a family.
And do you know much about when your family came to the US?
Yeah, so my dad's family is Italian. Um, and there's this like a very clear-cut story. Like they came in like the 1900s to 1920s, the whole family came over. Um, so that story is like very direct. My mom's family is like a little bit more mishmash, like a lot going on there. I think it's mostly Irish and they came over in the 1800s. I'd say is like the bulk of the family tree there. Um, but yeah, like my dad's family, like through Ellis Island into Long Island or into Queens and then eventually, right? And then my mom's has like a more complicated story. I think it went through DC and then ultimately went to Queens.
Amazing. Have you seen Brooklyn?
Have I seen what?
Brooklyn, the film. And it's like,
The city. No, I haven't seen the film.
oh my God. Because it's like the guy's Italian, it's in Long Island. And
Okay.
have you heard of it?
No, I
It's like
haven't.
Saoirse Ronan's in it. It's like a big film. Anyway, she's like Irish and
Okay.
he's Italian. It's so sweet. And they're in Long Island. And it's like
What?
100 years ago. So
Oh,
it could
100.
be,
No.
well, it's not really the story of your parents. But anyway, um, it's
No, but
just reminding me of that.
you would be surprised the kind of like ethnicity and like the migration into Ellis Island and then Long Island. Like Italians, Irish, Jewish. Like there's a lot of like themes from like the 1800s and 1900s. That's, yeah, I'm not surprised. So okay,
It's
I
just
wrote it down though so that I can watch it.
nice. It's just funny because it's the same. My ancestors are also from like Ireland and Italy, but it's obviously so different being an Australian version of that versus being like Long Island,
Yes,
which has so many stereotypes and stuff about it. Anyway,
exactly. You got the cool
okay,
one.
and then Paleogiannis is, I'm guessing, your husband's Greek.
Yes, his dad's from Greece.
And is he from Long Island as well?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, we met through friends.
Nice. Okay, so what was your school like?
High school or college?
High school.
I went to a public high school. Um, it it was fine. I held my own. I feel like high school is like a weird rite of passage for everyone. I kind of like just stayed focused on dance, school, had some friends as well. Still friends with one of my friends from high school, but that's really it. And yeah, like it was it was high school and it was like I was like excited to leave. It was one of those like I wasn't like peaking or like in my prime there. Um but yeah, then I was like very excited. Honestly, like from like sophomore year, I was like couldn't wait to go to college and go away and kind of leave my little bubble of Long Island. Um, so yeah.
Why did it feel like a bubble?
Uh, I don't know. I don't know if this is just like a suburban thing or if it's like a US thing or Long Island. Like I don't know if I assume everyone has a similar experience, but you just are like kind of stuck within like the four corners of your town, right? Before you have a car. Um, and yeah, I just you know what, better yet said. It's like I wasn't really I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of close friends. I had like a few but I didn't really connect with people in like a multifaceted way. Like I didn't have a lot of friends that I could connect on like kind of every corner of my life. I had like friends that I had a lot of fun with, or I had friends that were in my classes in school and like my AP classes and stuff like that. I had my like dance friends, but I never had friends who like understood the full version of myself. Um, so I really, it was like I had my family for that, right? And so like I was very close with my parents, um, and my brother, but yeah, I think it was like exciting to kind of explore new social circles and like new groups of people who maybe thought a little bit differently. Like I mentioned before, like Long Island kind of has like a lot of people who have vowels for their last names and have like similar upbringings, similar ethnicities and like backgrounds. And so it was I was kind of just dying to like get out there and meet people who I keep saying like multifaceted, but like people who were more multifaceted, people like who had more experiences beyond like the one that I had only ever known.
Huh. And I guess you would have been exposed to that through traveling with dance, right?
Yes, which is a good, that's like a good tying it together. I think that probably made me really think about it of just like even I remember meeting people who were like from Texas and Louisiana and like I didn't really know people who were Southern, right? Like I live on the East Coast in New York. Like really I know people like up and down the coast and maybe California. But besides that, like Middle America was kind of like a mystery to me. Um and so yeah, I think there was a lot of like, oh, like some of these dancers, for instance, like also were super, like they were like valedictorians and salutatorians of their classes. And I was like, that's incredible that people can like do so much and like have so much substance to them. And that started to get me really excited about like the different types of people that exist in the world and like meeting all of them and kind of like my ambition. I think of ambition from like a lot of high schoolers probably is like that, but it's like there's probably so much the world has to offer. And I'm stuck in class with the same people that I've been going to school with since I was 5, right? And so I think just like versatility and wanting to meet new people and honestly having never found like I have like one best friend from high school, but that's it. So I think there was that like yearning for more friendships, for more connections and relationships.
Cool. And what was it that your family wanted for you?
Uh, ooh, I am probably probably not far from where I started my career. Like I said, like my parents' most successful friends were accountants. My parents were like very supportive. Like I was like they helped me kind of figure out what major I wanted that like had that kind of trajectory that I thought I was looking for. Um but yeah, I think they just wanted me to have like a stable, safe career. Um they love that I'm still a CPA even though I haven't done accounting in a few years. Um it's like a thing of pride for them. And so I think like what would they want for me? Probably like that like security and stability in my career. Yeah.
And so were their values like work hard, yeah, what were the values?
Mm, probably I think there was like a little bit of the work ethic. Like there definitely was. I think I probably um outperformed their expectations of work ethic. Like my mom, like I can recall many times like having phone calls with her and she's like, "Jess, just take a break. Like you don't need to be like grinding this hard and doing all this." Like so she always like kind of set really high expectations for me, but I think they're especially as I got older, like I pushed those kind of milestones even further. So yeah, I think values probably like there was a sense of working hard and I probably took that and like put on steroids. Um, but balance was always very important to my parents. I don't know if I found that as important until recently. And I don't know, they are very family is very important to them. So I think like those are probably like the biggest three things is like working hard, balance, and like spending time with one another.
Did religion play a role in your upbringing at all?
It did. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with religion though. So I won't go too far down this, but it definitely did. We went to church every Sunday or most Sundays. And like me and my brother were like acolytes, which is like an altar boy and altar girl. I don't even know if that's a phrase. Um, but yeah, my mom would be like the lecturer, my dad would like collect the donations. So we like very much were like a church family for a few years there. And honestly, even like my preschool that I went to was like part of like the Lutheran church I was part of. But once I started like having dance and having competing priorities, um, I stepped away from religion. Eventually, I feel like my family kind of did as well. But I also think that's like this weird, crazy shift in the world of like where you congregate and like where you spend your time and like have that like sense of family and community. And I think it like historically, like religion has played a large part in that. And now you're coming on times where like, you know, me and my family, it was like a routine we had, but now we have different routines and like still have that mission of like community and respect and like growth and learning. It's just it's taken a different form than religion. Um, but yeah, that was like pretty, I don't want to say integral. I don't want to give it more credit than it had, but it was a part of my life for sure growing up.
Mhm. Do you think Long Island still has that same, or where you are has the same community feel, or it's like changed?
I think the whole world has changed. I'm like, I don't know if anything has like that same exact community feel. I'm like thinking now on like Sunday mornings, me and my husband go to Barry's and we work out. I'm like, that's our that's our modern day community feel good, doing something for our bodies, our souls, right? Um, so I don't
I
know.
guess I mean like kids still playing in the street and like that kind of thing, like
Mhm.
families knowing each other, like knowing your neighbors and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my parents are still in the same house that they were in when we were growing up. I still see it. I see like the kids, like there's probably been like different tranches of kids at different times, like growing up. And granted, we had a lot of kids that were around our age when we were growing up, but I'd say I know a lot of people have issues about like kids not going out in the streets anymore and being like playing video games and whatnot, but like I still see it when I go back home, like when I visit my parents. Um, so I feel like it's still there. I don't know it's to what degree. Um, but I think it probably exists as much as it does in any other kind of like suburban community.
Hmm. Cool. Okay, so how was college for you then?
I feel like college, like I didn't have much to share about my upbringing because it always feels like very like I was just like waiting. I feel like I was like planting my seeds and like waiting to like leave. Um, so college was definitely like transformative. Like as again, as is for everyone, right? It's just like that transformative time of your life. Like you leave home. It was really important to me that I didn't. I remember my mom like wanted me to apply to colleges on Long Island. And I was like, absolutely no. Like, I need some space. I need something different. Ultimately, I did not go as far as I wanted. I originally like wanted to go to school in California. Um, but I ended up at Delaware, the University of Delaware. Our one claim to fame really is Joe Biden. I think that's our one and only famous kind of graduate or alumni.
Oh, he
Um,
went there. He's from
yes,
there as well, right?
I don't recall. I think he might be, or at least he was like maybe senator. I hope this is correct, otherwise it's embarrassing. But yes. So went to the University of Delaware. It was like a 3-hour drive from here. Um, and that was great, right? I was like on the dance team when I auditioned for the dance team when I was in high school, like my senior year. Got in before you like had to make your decision on which college you were going to. So I committed to going to University of Delaware. You start going like when you're on the dance team, like it's like half a sport is how I would put it. Like you're like one foot in the door into like the athletics program. Like we got like some like athletics perks. But it's not like fully recognized as a sport at universities. Maybe that's changed, but back then it was like a in between. But like we would go, we had like some practices over the summer, and then we went to school like a month earlier than everyone. So my freshman year was just like, I think it was just like the coolest experience was like going to campus like a month earlier than everyone else and just like living in dorms because we like were like it wasn't the dorm I'd lived in my freshman year. It was like they compressed us into like a smaller campus basically. And so it was just all athletes and it was every single sport and it was like one of the coolest experiences. And I think just like having the dance team as part of like it had been so much of my identity dance and then like having that continued into college and like having, like I'm Jess and I'm on the dance team, um, became something that yeah, it was like part of my identity and it was very I think it made the transition for better or for worse. Like I don't know that it should have been my whole identity. But it made the transition to college and like enjoying myself and like feeling like part of something so much easier and just so much more fun. So so yeah, I'd say transition was great, college was great. I actually only did the dance team for 2 years. It was like not the best program for me. I again, going back to like, did I love dance? Um, I loved the structure. I loved the identity part, but I was like having a lot more like negative experiences with it than positive experiences. Um, and so I ended up stepping away from that after 2 years. So I did 2 years on the dance team and then 2 years not. And then I joined a sorority and I was an accounting major and I like got the EY internship, like the externship my sophomore year and then like my junior year and it like kind of keeps rippling the externship to the internship to the job offer. So like I had all of the kind of like accolades and like friends and community and like all of the steps I needed. I had a high GPA. So I like checked off all the boxes of like having a good college experience. Um, and yeah, I think just like on a personal level, it's probably like a lost soul. Like again, like identity, like totally tied myself to dance team and then after that tied myself to like my sorority and like my friends. Um so I don't know that I had like a lot of like self-discovery. I feel like that was more post-college, was like college was like expansion and meeting people and like seeing how like different worlds kind of worked and like different people worked. And like trying things out, but like it wasn't as much about like who is Jess. Like I feel like I left college and was like, I have no idea like who I am. And not that I said that question, but like in retrospect, I'm like, there was a lot of like learning and challenges that came post college because college was like this just like bubble of a time. And it was like the most fun, the best time of my life. I think I will always go down saying that. Um, but not like the best for me.
Hmm.
That's my summary.
What was some of the negative stuff that was happening on the dance side?
I'm I actually think it goes back to like friendships and relationships. Like there are people who are very extroverted and like have a lot of friends and have a lot of friend groups and a lot of group chats and all of that. And I remember like there were like huge friend groups and things like that in high school and honestly starting in middle school. Um, I tend to run more independent and autonomous. Um, I I can do team settings and doing them well in like corporate life, but more so I'm like thinking like high school dance team was fine, but college dance team, I think it was just like very intense and very we gave so much of our life to it. That almost like your whole identity and your whole life was the practice followed by the game. Then you'd go to school, then you like there was so much going on. There's so many different layers to your day. And I don't like the phrase they owned you, but like so much of my life was that. And I wanted to have friends outside of dance team. I wanted to have experiences outside of it. Um, and I think I was just struggling with like my autonomy and my independence. Yeah. And like wanting, right? Like I remember even thinking like the internship, like I had to tell them that I had to tell dance team that or I would have had to tell them that like I couldn't make a few practices because of it because like my internship would basically overlap when everyone would like start going back to school. And those types of things, I was like, my internship should be more important than dance team. Like, why? I think the prioritization of it was like starting to get funky in my head. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. There was definitely like a lot of different reasons, but I'm trying to summarize. I feel like at the end of the day, it was like I wanted to do what I wanted to do on my schedule, and it was like very after 2 years of like a very strict schedule, like I was just like itching for more independence.
So was it a hard adjustment leaving?
Oh, I wouldn't use the word hard. I would say it was like fun. Like it was like for the first time in my life, it was like no rules, right? Like I was no longer in high school living with my parents. I was no longer like under, 6 a.m. workouts or, 7 p.m. to like 11 p.m. games. Like I finally like had my own schedule and freedom and flexibility. And I loved it. It was great. I definitely it was also hard like to watch them continue. To like watch like my old roommates and my friends like continue on with the team. And even now, I mean, there's like a I always feel very connected and tied to like experiences I've had. So like when I watch like the University of Delaware dance team compete still, like I love watching them and I like always do feel that sense of like pride and like remembering all my fond memories. Um but at the same time I know that it was like so like there was like that sadness and that like grief almost of like oh I kind of wish I was there, but what I got in return, like for instance I was able to like study abroad, so I was like able to do things that maybe I couldn't have if I was still on the dance team. So I think 2 years was like a perfect time for me to have like that transition from high school to college and then to have like 2 years of like more just me on my own.
Hmm. Wait, how do you still watch them?
Oh, they like live stream the competitions.
Oh my God,
Oh
fun.
wait, hold on, there's two things here. They live stream the competitions every year. It's in January. But also I judged the Long Island dance team competitions. For like the past 4 years, I've been doing it. And there's like three competitions a year, and it's the high school teams as well as the college teams. So Delaware doesn't compete there, but like the other colleges that are in the same kind of division, they compete there. So it like makes I'm like in the world. Um, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah,
And do you still dance?
no, no. I had to think about that. I've taken like a class here and there over the last 8 years. But no.
Mhm. Okay, what does externship mean?
Ooh, it was like when you're a sophomore, it was how you got into the pipeline towards the internship. So the externship was like a 2-day program where you did nothing. I mean, it was just, the accolade was just getting accepted. And then you would sit there and like listen to like an overview on PwC and EY. Um, and then 95% of the people from the externship got the internship, right? And then you do the internship and 95% of the people get the job offer. So it was like the same thing. It's just a formality where they started their pipeline and their candidate screening like a year earlier than the internship.
Got it. Yeah, all of that pipeline stuff made it so hard for me. I had no idea when I moved to New York because I
Oh,
went on exchange to Cornell, which was
uh,
similar. That I was like, how am I getting all these credits for like trail running or these crazy things when I was like studying maths at home?
I was just thinking about that my senior year. I did a 6 a.m. spin class, I think my final semester. It was only like one credit, but yeah, I feel like my final was me getting on the bike in front of a class and like taking them through a song like as the cycle instructor. Like that was my final. Anyways, yes, to your point, trail running, cycling, I'm like, why are these college credits?
Yeah. But yeah, moving there, I just I mean, first I just thought I would go for a gap year and like be a
Huh.
waitress, and then I found out America doesn't work how other countries do, where like you can afford to live in Manhattan
Yeah.
on a minimum wage. Anyway, so then I had to get a job, but it was like, oh my God, everyone was like, why are you turning up here asking for a job? Like you're not from like a Target school or haven't done like all these internships and stuff. I was just like, I just want a job.
It's
I'm
so silly.
available.
Such formal programs, like the structure, and it's so silly. My husband did just got his like MBA and was doing like the MBA recruiting, and it's just a reminder that it's so silly how corporate and formal these programs are, um, and different than it used to be.
So did you like EY?
Yeah, I spent like nearly 5 years there. I'd say I loved it when I started. I actually think I like loved it entirely too much. Like I gave it a lot more credit than it needed. And I was just like thriving. Like I think I had been waiting. Like again, like I talked about like high school, I felt like I was like waiting for college. And then by my senior year of college, I was just so excited to like have purpose and like have responsibilities, probably the lack of dance and things like that going on. Um, and I was excited to make money. I didn't like money did not come easy, nor did I have much of it. So I was like very excited to finally make my own money and make like good money, right? For like someone who's 21. And I loved it. My first client was in Israel, was based in Tel Aviv. So it was also like a bizarre kind of nuanced experience that I had. But in my first 2 years, where I was just an audit, right? Like I was just an accountant, a CPA, I flew to Tel Aviv 10 times. And our trips would span from like a week to 2 weeks. And it was like the best transition once more, from going to college to going to like New York City and a career. Um, we would go out, we had so much fun, and Tel Aviv was like the most incredible city. And they flew us business. It was like EY and these corporates, like, right, have their business travel policies that when you're traveling internationally, you have to fly business. So I was like 21 years old, flying business. My flights would be like $48,000 round trip. And so I then racked up like all of these miles. Um, and so I started like getting super obsessed with points, like hotel points, airline points, all of that. And so I think I just thought I had like the best job in the entire world. Until I realized I didn't. Until I realized I was an accountant. But it distracted me for quite a while. I'd say like I got the job I wanted. I was on like a cool client. It was like a public tech company. I was in Israel. Like I was having experiences that like were unparalleled to my friends, my colleagues even. Um, until I realized like a year in, I was realized that all of the externally facing things were cool, but like the work I was doing was monotonous. And I realized that the first year was just going to repeat itself forever on like the annual cycle of busy seasons. So yeah, so then I made the change. I made the switch into consulting. It was like very difficult. It took a whole year to do it. And it was like a year of like no one telling me that I was actually going to be able to do it. Instead, a lot of people were like, you kind of got to cut your losses here. Like this is impossible. Um, but after a year, I think it was like 10 months actually, I was able to transfer into, they called it like performance improvement, financial strategy group. And yeah, that was monumental for my career. I think my my belief that staying in accounting was gonna kind of pigeonhole me was very true. And it was like you asked me like how my parents thought about it right now, whatnot. And I think a lot of people were like, you got your CPA, you did all this, like why would you change? But I really just felt like it was so monotonous. I was going to be pigeonholed and it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. So went into consulting and that opened up a plethora of like opportunities and options and kind of allowed me to continue even today. Like I'm still like so freaking grateful for that moment and that decision and like being able to do it because I would never be able to do the stuff I'm doing today if I never made that transition from audit into consulting.
And how did you choose consulting or that particular practice?
I'm I think I would have taken any consulting. That practice specifically was like the most aligned though. That practice did like CFO back office consulting. So accounting fell into like right the CFO's office and like all of their pillars and functions. So it was like the most transferable. Is like in the end, like some of my one of my projects, for instance, when I was in consulting, was doing like the process mapping and like recommendation and um yeah, the process mapping, like current state assessment, future state solution design for an accounting function. So it had like that those moments of like, okay, yeah, she's a CPA. This is great. Like my team was so excited that I was a CPA and like put me right on that. Um, so I think it was just the most transferable across like all of the different like consulting groups that existed.
Got it. That's so funny. I moved teams as well at EY. I'm just thinking it's so weird if we would have been, well, I don't know how often you went to the Times Square office, but it's like
I
if
was
we were
there
in the same
every day.
building, if you weren't in
I
Tel Aviv.
Yes, but I went to Tel Aviv, right, like 5 times a year.
Hmm.
And all the other days I was in the building and right there was like the 22nd floor was at the cafeteria with the subsidized pricing. I don't know if you remember that at all. Do you?
Yeah, of course.
Um they had on Fridays they had like dollar pancakes and $2 waffles. And they had like grilled chicken wraps for like $4. Like I just remember the prices. Like you're in the middle of Manhattan and the prices on this food were incredible and the food was delicious. And I still dream about the 22nd floor. So
Amazing. Um, yeah, funny. But yeah, I had a similar experience. Everyone's like, no, you can't move. It's too hard. And then it's like you just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and then
yeah,
eventually it
you have
happens.
to hear a million no's and everyone telling you that it's not going to happen. Um, which practices did you move from?
I started in I was always in TAS,
Yeah,
transaction
yeah,
services.
yeah.
So I started in like an M&A consulting team. But
Yeah. Okay.
unlike what I expected was to be like everyone's flying to really cool places. All my clients were always like in New Jersey.
Yeah,
And I would be like living in a hotel in New Jersey. And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't like because I just moved from Australia to live in Manhattan and like all my boyfriend and everyone was there. And so I would like try and drive home like 2 hours. But it was like crazy because the hours are crazy. And
yeah.
anyway, and I
I
hated how everyone was just obsessed with hotel points. I'm like, guys, there's more to life than hotel
I
points.
swear I got like suckered into it my first year. Like I said, I was like getting so excited by all these things. Then I was like, wait, cool, I have all these points. I hate like it became so much of our conversation at like consulting, any travel, it's so silly. And there was just like that reality check of like the points are not what's important. Like for some people, I guess it is. Then right, like then the points guy got like really famous. So like it definitely became like a big thing, but it's not the most important thing in life. To your point on the consulting thing, I was living in Long Island at one point when I was in consulting, and my client was in Jersey City, but they also had a office in Tampa, Florida. And I literally would beg my engagement manager. I'd be like, please send me to Tampa. I was like, the commute to Tampa and back and staying, like, I was living with my parents too. I was like, please, like, send me there. I like get to like hang out at a Marriott all week and then fly back is so much easier than living with my parents and commuting from Long Island to Jersey City every day. I was like, please help me. So yeah, consulting can be cool if you have like clients in the right locations. Otherwise, you could be just like going to clients that your commute is terrible.
Yeah. But then even still, I had a friend who was like flying to Hawaii every week, and he's like, it's not like I'm sitting on the beach, like I'm just in a hotel room or an office, and the
Yeah.
flight's brutal. Anyway,
Yeah.
but then yeah, I moved to valuations, and it's funny because after that, I moved to investment banking. Like I moved to London and did investment banking, and I was thinking because the EY perks are amazing, like all the training, and you'd fly wherever and stay at like in crazy hotels and have
Yeah.
like a suite and whatever. Um, that then when I moved to investment banking, I'm like, it's going to be even better. And it was like, no, because it's a public company. It's like they can't, I guess, because EY is a partnership, we would just ask the partners, like, we want to have free bagels every morning because it's busy
Yeah.
season and we're unhappy. And they'd be like, okay. Whereas other
I
like
also
banks definitely aren't like that.
I stayed at like a Four Seasons and I didn't realize it at the time, like the magnitude of that. But like in retrospect, I'm like, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Boston. Like there were so many other hotels I could have stayed at, but like it was on the list of hotels I could stay at and I did it. Um, so yeah, a lot of that job, I just feel like corporate America, like big companies, big consulting companies, you just like lose sight of the work sometimes and like all of like the logistics and dynamics and like hierarchies, right? Like your one-on-ones with your managers and your performance reviews. Like you actually literally lose sight of like the work itself. And it's almost like this distraction. Um, and a lot of companies like are happy to keep you in that distraction, that like keep you staying there. I'm gonna bring up this anecdote because I've been like waiting to have a rant about it. Um, but at EY, I got my first year. I'm like having the best time of my life. I love my job so much. Um, and I worked so hard, right? I'm like working all the hours. I feel so proud about that. And I got a 4 out of the 5 scale rating. And the way like it worked at EY is like everyone got a 3. And then especially your first year, some people got a 4. No one got a 5 our first year. But when I got my review, it was like, Jess, you got a 4, and that means you're in the top 10% of your starting class. And you're now called a high performer. And so all of these things distracted me. Like, I was like, I'm a high performer. And then, okay,
Interesting.
rant over.
So, but so how did you find the consulting years and why did you decide to leave eventually?
Consulting years were fine. It was very much like oh, the grass isn't greener on the other side. Like, yeah, I feel more proud about my role and I feel like my opportunities are more vast leaving here. But I think I really noticed when I basically connected with the global startup leader. I became like very close with her. We're still close now, but I spent like my last 2 years at EY working with her, kind of like her chief of staff. I'd say like anything like she would like set the strategy, and then if she needed like someone to do the stuff, she'd pull me in for like all of the operations and execution. Um, so I did that like on the side. Like it was like a side project just because I thought she was so cool. Jen is so cool. And I was really excited to like be in that world. Um, I think what I realized is like that work still wasn't it for me, but it was a hell of a lot more interesting than what my day job and like my day practice was, which was the financial strategy consulting. Um, I also was doing it for financial institutions, the financial strategy consulting. So I'd be going into like all of these huge, large public companies, and like I was just like a little pawn in everything that was going on, right? The value that I was contributing was not being seen, at the highest level. Um, And so that in comparison or in contrast with like the work I was doing with like EY's global startup leader, um, really just made me realize like I don't know if I want to stay in this kind of hamster wheel of a corporate life, right? As you've heard, I have a lot of feelings on corporate, like big corporations and like what happens. And I think working with her was just like a huge eye opener. And honestly, she was just like a huge mentor to me, of like, there's so many more options that exist, and I don't need to stay here on my little hamster wheel. So, yeah.
And so what did you do next?
So then, well, I did other things. I actually did a year rotation in the innovation practice at EY. I really like tested every single group and every opportunity at EY to make sure that like I was ready to leave. Like I really was hopeful and like holding out that something was gonna work. Um, but yeah, so I spent my last year in the innovation practice and working with the global startup leader on the side. And eventually I realized that I wanted to be doing more hands-on, more building, more like actually like driving value versus like putting together decks that like maybe the folks never even saw them. I think there was a deck I worked on for an entire year, and I don't know that it ever got in the hands of a client. So I knew what was important to me was to be doing and executing and driving value, which sounds silly, but really that's how I felt at that moment. So I went to a startup. I got like an operations role. It was like a strategy and ops role. At a It was like a Y Combinator graduated company that now is at a Series B fundraising. It ended up raising a Series C right before I joined or right as I was joining. And yeah, it was culture shock. It was whiplash. It was a lot of crying and a lot of I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I think having that like cozy support system of everything I just described about my first 5 years of working, and then having none of that, and it was all about it was can you make it? Like I'm trying to think of how to nicely say this, but it was figure your shit out. Like you join, you onboard yourself, and you figure your shit out. It's a sink or swim. That's really my best phrase here. Otherwise, if you're not driving enough value that exceeds your salary, and that's what startups are. Like this, it's nothing actually about this startup. It's the culture of startups and like their economic situations, their cash burning. Like it's a whole different game, a whole different playground. Um, and I don't think I knew enough about it when I was joining. Like I did not realize the full extremity of the situation, and the dynamic. So it was a lot, but it also was thrilling. Like I said, all of that kind of in like a negative tone, but actually it was a huge realization and validation of like, I wish I had left sooner. Um, it's fine in retrospect, but like if I were to do it again, and when I talk to people who like join consulting or even like investment bankers or anything who are like early on in their career in very structured corporate programs, they try to keep you there. But really there's so much opportunity and so much excitement when you leave. And I think that's just how I felt when I joined my first startup.
And how did the opportunity come about?
I actually I attended this like Y Combinator networking event. And it was very bizarre. It's 2021 when this is going on. It's 2021. It was like a virtual like pitch session. They basically had 20 YC graduated companies from different times. Like for instance, the company I was at graduated YC in like 2015. And so they had 20 different companies that were hiring pitch. And then you went into a breakout room with like the companies that you were most interested in. Um, and so I went into a few breakout rooms. I remember I went into Vanta's breakout room, and Vanta, I still like, it's just like a top tier company to me. And they hadn't even raised their Series A yet. They were like so nascent at this point. And they just raised like a huge funding round last week. So that's like my claim to fame. I'm just like, if only maybe that direction I had gone. But anyways, did my whole thing. And then the recruiter from the company that I joined. It was called Instawork. She reached out to me after. I didn't join the breakout room, nothing like that, but she saw my name on the list. And so she reached out to me, and it wasn't the type of company I was looking to join. Like, it wasn't on my radar at all. But I started talking to people and I just started like getting excited. And I realized that there was like an opportunity to actually be very hands-on, and like I was just really excited to leave EY and to be around like really smart people, and the investors were incredible. Like their board, Bill Gurley's on it. Like it's like an epic board and epic investors. And I was like the people are great, and so yeah, that's how I joined.
What does the company do?
It's a temp labor marketplace. So basically, it's targeted for blue collar workers. I'm looking for low skill work. It's across hospitality and light industrials, but like the best way to explain it is like if a local restaurant needed a bartender tonight, they would go on Instawork, and request bartenders, and like Instawork is a marketplace that's vetted and then obviously dispatches that to their pros. You get someone, it's the gig economy
Uh-huh.
basically.
And what was your
Uh,
role?
I was part of the, it changed a bunch actually. I joined like very specifically on like the supply operations team. They were building it out at the time. Then they disbanded that team and they were making their first acquisition. We actually were acquiring mom and pop temp staffing agencies. And I there was like a head of corp dev that did all of the financial modeling and like the deal evaluation and whatnot, and they pulled me in as like the operating partner to lead the M&A integration. So that's where I spent most of my time while I was there, was reporting to the head of corp dev and the CFO and executing on the deals and like assessing whether it was viable, um, and making sure like everything integrated smoothly.
And is that the job you left most recently?
No. So that was a job. That was like my first startup. I was there for a year and a half. And I really liked it. The M&A integration stuff was really cool. Like opportunity was great. Company was growing. It was like 100 people when I joined, maybe a little bit less. And it was around 500 people when I left. So I really saw it through like a really cool transformative time. But ultimately, like I said, it wasn't I hadn't sought this company out. And so it wasn't really in the industry that was like getting me jazzed up. It was doing really well. It had good mission, good purpose, like felt really good about the work I was doing and spending my time. But when I thought about my career growth, my career trajectory, where I was spending my time, like where all my energy was going to, I wanted to start building my career in a narrative that was consistent, like across me, like that was aligned with what I wanted, right? That's the best way to say it. So also the M&A integration stuff was cool, but I wanted to not just be involved in one strategic initiative. Um, right, like M&A was a strategy, but I wanted to have access and be able to see the full business. Which is like very presumptuous for someone who's like young and growing their career, but I think I just wanted to learn and have that exposure. And again, like I was like almost at risk of getting pigeonholed when I was at EY. And I think I was starting to feel that way again of like, is M&A integration what I want to do? And it was more so I realized like, no, I'm like, I have a very generalist background. What I really want to do is be chief of staff to a CEO somewhere. So basically, those were my two objectives: land a chief of staff role and work for a company that's in women's health and wellness, or kind of like a consumer tech company. So I ended up messaging the CEO of a company that I was super obsessed with here in New York, and she responded, and the rest is history. I somehow landed it, and it, yeah,
That experience.
it is good. I spent a year there. It was, I think I was at like an incredible high. Like if you can imagine, I literally just wrote down 5 companies that I want to work for. I want to be chief of staff. I want to work at one of these companies. And I literally reached out to the CEO, a CEO with a background that was unparalleled and sick. And she responded. And I had interviews with the CEO, CFO, COO, digitally, then in person, case study. Like I did all of the things and it was like a very competitive process and I got it and I was like, this feels surreal. Um,
Were they running a process for chief of staff,
but
or were they running a process to find someone, or you were
oh
just like, I'm gonna pitch this role?
oh sorry. Yes, they were also running a process. I had actually applied and I never heard back. I want to say that was like the beginning of August. I applied and I never heard back. And then by the end of August, I was like, I need this job. Um, and I messaged her and they like pulled me back in, which is wild. And that's recruiting, hiring processes insane, right? Because like my resume went absolutely nowhere and then I actually ended up being the one who got the job. So, it's crazy what LinkedIn messaging outreach can do. Um Okay. I like built that all up though because like literally this was my dream job. Actually one more thing to add was we were supposed to move to San Francisco. My husband's job offer after his MBA was in San Francisco and like it was like a big decision that we had been planning for years was that we were going to like move and build our life there. Um and we had like gone out there like during his internship like for 3 months. And we liked it. We didn't love it, I will say. But when I got the job, like to add even more height to all of this, I was like, okay, we're not going to San Francisco, or I'm not going. I was like, I'm going. This is in person in New York. So I basically he was able to transfer his job offer to New York. It actually was like a lot more seamless. So we didn't actually have to think about what would happen if he wasn't able to. But yeah, I was on like a high. I had literally everything I wanted, all of the things that I was targeting. I literally just changed the trajectory of like where I was living, probably forever now to New York. And it was fine. It was like it was very fine. I loved being in medical aesthetics. It's called Everbody. It's a cosmetic dermatology venture-backed startup. They'd raised close to $100 million over like a few funding rounds and it was a very cool opportunity. But the role was a lot of had a lot of like cachet to it, the chief of staff role. But it wasn't like the fulfilling hands-on building that I had really appreciated from my role before, and that honestly what I'm doing now. So yeah, I spent a year in a role that I learned so much. I cannot imagine if I didn't have that experience. And I was in an industry that I was like begging to be in. Um, but it was like a good year of learning and realizing I want to be someone who's not the like mile wide, inch deep. Like I want to be someone who like goes really deep into things. Like I want to be like given an objective or like self-identified or whatnot and like actually just like become a master of it and like execute in that fashion versus like know every single thing that's going on in the company but actually not be accountable for any of it. Okay. I like could talk about this forever, so I'm gonna stop there.
How did you wait? What was your pitch to her? I feel like this type of stuff is so helpful to people. So, what
uh,
was your pitch to the CEO? Just like, I love your company. Can we
it
meet?
was so
Or
cheesy, and I tweeted it when I started on Twitter like a few months ago. And I've sent my message out to like probably 300 people. Like I got so many people in my DMs actually wanting the tangible message. So I do send it. So if anyone wants it, I'm here for you. But it is cheesy and embarrassing, so I'm not unleashing that on LinkedIn unless someone really wants it. I like I was like sucking up. Like I don't know what word to use here, but like I was very complimentary. And I really wrote, I remember like one line in it is like, I really want to learn from you. Like my message was just like, it was short, it was concise. It was probably like 5 sentences total, including like my little quick intro. And I just basically was like, this is sick. I want to learn from you. Um, what's up? So weirdly, so everyone's response to my message is like, really? They're like, it's that easy. Um, I actually like died at the responses. Like some of them, like people were like upset that my message was like so simple. Other people were like, wow, I've been over engineering all of my outreach. They're like, I've been thinking too much about it. Like I've been overcomplicating it. They're like, this is great. So in the
Yeah.
sense of like it helped them move quicker because they stopped thinking about it.
Amazing. Yeah, because it is also kind of like a shot in the dark. Like the person might just not see it for some reason. So it's like there's no point spending like, hours. And if they do see it, you want to read something short because like everyone's busy.
Yeah, I think there's some people who like personalization and like you're gonna get you don't know who you're gonna get. It's a numbers game. Like you don't know who's gonna read it. But there's also a lot of people who like and appreciate brevity. Who just like want someone who gets straight to the point, which this interview probably nothing I'm saying is straight to the point, but like in a professional setting, I do think like especially in communications, people they want like the TLDR. Like they want to just know what you're saying. And if you make them read through more things, they're not interested. So it is like you might lose some people because you're being brief. But it's more efficient for you as like the person doing outbound messaging and cold messaging. Um, and I do think like a lot of especially CEOs who have to like tailor a lot of executive communications appreciate brevity.
Mm. So you didn't mention that you'd applied for the job.
I'm not gonna be able to find my message in like 1 minute, but
Mm.
I might have. I don't think
Okay.
I was not I had no ego about it. I probably told her that I applied and I was like very interested in it.
Mm.
I don't think I tried to play it coy.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Wait, and then what? Sorry, we've gone over. I love how you're like, how will we talk for an hour? I'm like, just wait. I have a lot of questions about anything.
Talk about my childhood because I didn't think there was much to talk, and even college, and you pulled some stuff out, so kudos.
Okay, but so to quickly
I lost you though.
wrap this up, what?
Hello?
Oh no, am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so to
No?
to wrap this up to what you started telling us at the start,
Also, I'm sweating, but the air conditioner is gonna be so loud.
is it really hot there?
It's probably 75 degrees, but without the air conditioning on and like me just talking, I'm like, I've got a nice glow.
Okay, we're nearly done. What? I also have no idea what 75 degrees means. Maybe like 25. I haven't been back to the US. I left the US like 6 years ago and I haven't been back. It's so weird. I need to go. I forget it's like another planet over there. Relearn what Fahrenheit means. Okay, so what was the transition like? How did you end up leaving? And then,
Okay, brevity. I'm holding myself to it now. I'm realized the role again, just like a mile wide, an inch deep, like knowing everything, but not feeling proud of what I was doing. Like, just like the fulfillment wasn't there. And I had the exact, like, in contrast, the role I had before was like extreme ownership, like leading and owning the M&A integration and being accountable for all of the metrics. So I had that in contrast. And I was like, I love this industry. I love being like in the board meetings, like next to the CEO all day. Um, but it was not just purpose wise. Like on paper, it was everything. On paper, it was so cool. But like internally and purpose wise, and like at the end of each day, like I didn't have that like sense of fulfillment and pride and accomplishment that like I had in the role I had before that. So it was very difficult, but I also was working so many hours that like applying for jobs and like going through the process was like something that felt daunting. And on top of that, I really wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do next. And what I didn't want to do was just leave and go to another company without being very, very thoughtful and intentional about where I wanted to grow my career next. Um, so I ended up I was like, I feel like everyone who's like 28 to 30 in the past 2 years has like taken time off and like, under the guise of a sabbatical. I actually haven't been hearing about it as much in the past few months, but like around the summer through fall, I feel like every other person I talk to is like quitting their job, taking time off, taking a sabbatical. Um, and I was super inspired. Like it just felt like the right thing to do for me. To really just like felt contradictory to everything, but to take time off and like think about what I wanted to do next, make sure that it was aligned with like where I wanted to be in like 3 to 5 to 10 years. Um, and really just confirm that I wasn't just like job hopping. Like that was something that I was like very conscientious of was like, yeah, this isn't the right fit. Do I have to learn what is the right fit by like continuing to go from one job to another? And that to me, like I loved being at EY for 5 years, right? Like I love like being invested and committed and having that camaraderie. And job hopping was just something like I have a thing against, and I did not want that to feel like what I was doing. So took time off, had zero plan in terms of like told myself I could take upwards of 12 months off, told myself I could do whatever I wanted, like really gave myself the freedom and flexibility to explore and like nothing was off the table, basically. That was really important to me. And I'd say after 2 to 3 months, it became just very quite clear to me like what I wanted to do. Um, and so started doing fractional operations and have multiple founders that I'm working with, and that's been incredible. Um, I'm like trying to think of how to say this eloquently and briefly, but it's been the best way for me to explore and navigate without that job hopping, right? And at the time, like this wasn't even something that I had been thinking about. So I'm so glad I took the time off, like really came back super energized, super excited about this. And now I have a portfolio of clients that is like my dream portfolio. I'm back in med spas, but more on the tech side than like the retail side. I'm working with a VC, and that has been like explosive and extraordinary and the most fulfilling. And I think you started this call by saying like it looks like I love my job. Um and I do. Like I love what I'm doing. I love who I'm working with. Like I love being able to be super intentional about who I'm working with. And it yeah, I didn't expect this for myself, but here I am and I left my role in December. Never thought I would like not have a full-time role, but this fractional operations work that I'm doing is kind of it's nuanced. Not a lot of people are doing it. It's like not the most common. More people are kind of sprouting up, but it's a really interesting kind of thing I found. And it feels very aligned with like where I'm at and where I'm going.
And how did you source your clients?
I'm I've met most of my clients in person at events. This is gonna go a little bit off, but basically I started tweeting and that's how I found you, right? But around like November, like when I was like thinking about leaving my job, all of that, I started tweeting and I met a friend like on Twitter. We ended up going to South by Southwest in Austin together. And it was like a lot of like, it was just a week of like explosive networking. Like we went to so many different events, we met so many different people. Um, and it was like one of the coolest weeks I've ever had. And it was the most whimsical thing I've done in years. Literally met her on the internet and like she asked me if I wanted to go to Austin and me and Jess like we're really good friends now. And like it was incredible. Also, just like the most bizarre, whimsical, like out of left field thing that I've done as like someone who's like a very boring kind of safe person. Um, okay, with that said, that trip like catapulted. I was like, I love being around people. Like I love meeting founders. I love meeting VCs. Like I love being in this space. And so I started doing that in New York, right? Like it was like, why am I just doing this at South by? Started doing it in New York and like just organically was like meeting a bunch of people and having fun with it. And so that's where most of my clients have come from.
Huh. And there was just a conversation that was like, oh, we need some help with this. And you were like, I can do it as like a consultant.
Yes. Actually, that's my first, that was like the way I got my first client. I'd say after that, once I had my first client under my belt, like just presenting as someone who does fractional operations, you either get it or you don't. Like a lot of people are like, what is that? But let me tell you, when I say it, and like a lot of founders, their eyes like open, like they hear chief of staff and fractional operations and they like start tweaking a little bit because what founders need is leverage. They need time leverage. Like they want to do 48 hours of work in one day. And so I just started like introducing myself as this and realizing how many more people, like once I had my clients, right? But how many people that this is something that there was never like a word or a label. This wasn't even really like a role or a thing. Um, but yeah, it seems to be um sitting well with like a lot of people and like of interest.
Okay. Oh my God, I have so many questions. Wait, I'll try and make it quick. How did you set your rates? And
Oh,
how do you deal with competing priorities?
yeah. Okay, setting rates is pretty easy. I talked to a lot of people. Um, I had not a lot of friends, but like even through Twitter, like I jumped on so many calls with people who are like fractional CMO, fractional COO. Um, and honestly, the nice part about Twitter is like all don't really know each other, and so like everyone is like super open and like it's a very helpful environment on Twitter. Um, but that helped me dictate my rate a lot. And honestly, like the first few times it was like trying to figure it out, but once I had a few clients, like it's just become kind of routine and like market rate, and like I've found where it's like comfortable for everyone involved. Like so that's on rate setting, competing priorities, very interesting. Um, I set so my clients are mostly on retainers. But I set estimated hours per week, and that helps ensure that from like a just like a high level standpoint, I'm not like over committing on like estimated number of hours per week, right? But I would say, during the day, like I could get a text from multiple people at once, right? And it can be urgent. Um, that can happen. But also, like, I feel like if there's anything from like consulting and just like working in startups, is like that is what would happen, except it would all be within the same company. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of like I'm learning a lot more like boundaries after a role as chief of staff where there are no boundaries. I definitely am learning like better communication, right? Like even if I get something that is urgent, but I can't get to it for an hour, right? Because I'm in a fractional nature, there isn't that expectation that I'm going to do it immediately, but like being very, very clear with people, like I've seen this. I'm going to get to it within 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever that time may be. I would say that's been my clutch and like my saving grace. Is just like extremely clear communication, especially on timing. And I'd say I did not like when you worked in a full-time role, like that wasn't as much as like important and pressing. And it's like just like good habit and behavior that I'm learning through being fractional.
Got it. So there's periods of like super intensity where you're working really late and then days where it's like more relaxed.
I don't know that I would say that. Probably like a little bit. Um, but I think yeah, I mean, naturally there's like ebbs and flows in work, but I also because like there's multiple clients, like it does balance out. Like I wouldn't say there's ever a day I wake up and I'm like chilling. Like even if I'm like having more of like a slower day, like there is always more work I can do, like for each client, right? Like being larger and more proactive and all of that. So I don't find those like valleys as much as maybe you would think I would.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
But it never gets too overwhelming.
I've done a good job in like making sure I'm not taking on too many clients. I'm I 2 to 3 is a sweet spot. And for instance, like I'm actually at this really cool point, and I don't know if this sounds like bragging, which now I'm embarrassed, but I'm starting to get inbounds, which is like the coolest moment for me. And I like can't believe that that's actually where I'm at this point, but I've gotten like referrals and now I'm getting inbounds, and I'm the type of person I like get excited when I get inbounds. Like I like want to learn more and I want to take it on, but I also number one don't need it. Like I have enough clients. Like I'm in a good place like fulfillment wise, right? Like I told you like my portfolio construction right now is like couldn't ask for more. And I yeah, it's just cool to be in this position, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and so when you left college, you said you felt like you didn't really know who Jess is. Now, do you feel like you do more?
I Yes. I think during the my time at EY, I did like a lot of like reflection, and honestly like moving back in with my parents was like a lot, but like a lot of like forced learning and like forced therapy of like what's going on. I didn't live with them for that long, but I would say I spent a lot of time reflecting on like what's most important to me, and I think the fact that I left a full-time role that on paper was everything to me and had progression opportunities to be even like more career rewarding and like everything I could ever want. But taking that step back because I knew I knew that I wasn't at my best there. And I knew that there had to be a better opportunity out there for me and a better structure and a better way of working and like a better work style. Um, like the fact that I took that risk and that bet on myself, like confirms that I am different and that like I know myself very well. Like that was like a huge risk and like a huge, even trying to explain it to people, there were like a lot of reactions, right? And a lot of people have opinions on it. And being able to like navigate that just confidently, and feel really good about my decision to me means that I know a lot about myself and that like I'm doing what's best for me. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I'm gonna ask you the last three
Oh
quick
goodness.
questions, unless you have anything else to add.
No.
Okay,
I've been blabbering, so I'm excited for a change.
um, what, how do you stay grounded?
Mm, I'm working out.
Is there a book that's had a big impact on your life?
I'm embarrassed to say this, but two books. One, nonfiction, The 4 Hour Work Week. It's a title that I never would have touched in my first like 7 years of working. But I read it 2 months before I put in my notice at Everbody. And I always thought it sounded super lazy and it was not for me. And not that I'm a 4 hour work week person, but a lot of like the principles and the mentality and the fact that you could get where you want to go in different creative ways, that there isn't like you don't need to do this one path. Um, I learned a lot through that. Sorry, I know your question was more just like one name one book,
No,
but
no, no, that's
that was
great.
like a huge moment for me reading that
Did
book.
that
Like in
inspire the sabbatical?
yes and no. Like I wouldn't directly correlate it, but like when I think back on those months, like right beforehand, I'm like there were so many things like being set in motion and like reading that book, having conversations with people about like how they were thinking bigger and more creatively about their careers. Like there was like all of these different things that I wouldn't attribute one thing, but it was the collection of different experiences. Second book,
I,
go on.
I just read it as well. And I
Oh,
did the challenges, like lying on the ground in the middle of the street.
you know what? I didn't do the challenges because I was listening to it while I was working out. But now I need to go back and look at them. Um, okay. Second book, really quickly. It was Fourth Wing, which is a fiction book. It's like a romantasy fantasy, but I say this because I can't like talk for an hour and not bring this up, but when I quit my job, I like wanted to do things that were fun and like kind of get back in touch with like Jess who like can have fun and like enjoy things. And so I read Fourth Wing and I've now read 57 books this year because I like loved Fourth Wing so much and it like sparked this like reading passion in me and I am like an obsessed fiction reader now and I'm like the happiest I've ever been. And I literally credit to like reading is like my hobby and I love it. And I had no idea. I read 6 books last year in 2023, and in 2024 already I've read 57. Like it's just like my life has changed from reading.
Amazing. Mostly fiction.
Hmm. Pure
Oh my
fun,
God.
pure joy. Like no pressure. Because in the past, I only read 6 books last year because I was like, they need to be business, like they need to be like self-improvement and like growth. And then this year I was like, no, like it can be whatever I want it to be.
Amazing. Okay. Okay. I have a bonus question because you're American. Sorry, I have to ask. What do you think is going to happen in the US election?
Ugh, what a loaded question. Um, what do I want? I'll answer politically. I want Kamala to win. What do I think? I don't know. I don't trust. I feel like the last election, I just remember the like panic and like the waiting on all the swing states. Um, I don't know. I kind of like I like to play devil's advocate. I like to prepare for the worst. So what do I think? I think mentally I'm preparing for it not to be her, but I'm really hoping for our first female president and her. So yeah.
Cool. Do you feel like it's as divisive now or it's getting
Uh,
more relaxed?
I I think there's two things here. Number one, Twitter has been wild on the politics. So looking at Twitter, I think is a very, it feels very divisive. Like it's like very in your face. Like what VC is like endorsing Trump, what VC is the 110 VCs from San Francisco that are endorsing Kamala. Um, so I think there it's like very, very clear in your face division. But I actually believe that everyone lives in their bubbles. Like when you're on like Instagram, like a social platform that's more of just like your network versus like seeing the full array of opinions and voices, I think everyone lives in an echo chamber, or most people elect to live in an echo chamber where their peers, their families, and all of that have the same similar beliefs and views. So do I think it's as divisive? I don't even know because I just think that if I were to go talk to someone who had different beliefs, like they we don't get like a full with social media and the algorithms and like even just like having your followers, I feel like we don't get like a real full representation of like what the world looks like. Twitter is my best bet and Twitter looks pretty divisive, so who knows?
But that's almost good, do you think, if VCs are like, if it's more open of like, we support this person, but then it's like, obviously, we are all doing business because it's just about like being successful as a VC, so it doesn't really matter what the founders' beliefs are.
You cut in and out, so I don't know if there was a question like embedded in there.
Um, okay, that could be like a whole nother topic. No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I mean, I guess the question is when it comes to business, obviously, like business is business, like politics is a side. So
Yeah.
could it be a good thing that people are like open about like, oh, I support this candidate and you support a different one, but like we're still doing business together? Versus like, I hate these other people and like I'll never talk to them.
Like 100% it would be a good thing if like we could set our views aside and like our political differences. I don't know what's in the water. That's really not it, but I think in like the past 8 years, the world or the US, I'm like in my little US bubble, the US bubble has become just like so polarized. Like it is political, and honestly it's also like coming of age. Like I don't know, it's hard to like understand which of it is because of the age I'm at and which of it is because like the world is actually, or the US is operating very differently and more polarized than ever before. But I do think people tend to be more extremist in their political views now, or maybe it's because the candidates are a little bit more extreme. But I also think the algorithms are feeding into more extremist, like showing you and populating like the worst. And so it's driving more extremist views on both ends. And so I think it makes it harder to just like casually doing business with one another when you're like both exposing your political views. And when identity and freedom and all of those things are infused in the people you're backing. So I think there's a lot there. But I hope that one day it's like not as polarized. Like that would be my goal, is that like it's not like people can have political differences and have different ideologies and views, and like it doesn't interrupt anything, right? It's but the two-party system right now is driving a lot of challenge.
Yeah, the two-party system is not a good idea, but anyway, that was like immediately obvious as soon as I moved to the US. Was like, why does it operate like this? Anyway, um, it's like sporting teams or something. Anyway, um, okay, last question. What three words describe the best version of Jess?
Light, uh, light, generous, and hopeful.
Okay, where can people find you if you want to be found, or any other shout outs you want to do?
Find me on Twitter. I like talk about Twitter like I have a big following or something, but it's just a place I enjoy being with, and like I feel I just have a lot of fun with it. So at Jess Dato, Dato. Um, best place to find me.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jess.
Yes, it was so great chatting with you. I'm going to be in London next month, so if you're there, let's chat.